In this session, we're going to be writing the end of our story, The Selfish Giant. So previous to this, you've sequenced the stories, you've wrote some keywords, and that was your plan. Then you've used your plan to write the beginning of your story, and yesterday you should have wrote the middle of your story. So today we're going to be writing the ending. Pause the video now and have a little think. What happens at the end of our story? Okay, let's have a look. So at the end of our story, the giant changed how they treat others, and rather than being selfish, he starts to be kind. So that's what we need to write in our story today. But remember, we can't just use that as a sentence, we have to explain it fully. So what are we going to include? So we're going to have to say the character changes his attitudes, like we've just said. So he's no longer being selfish, he's being kind. The children come back to play, and they don't just play just by themselves, the giant joins in too. And we can explain that the garden looks beautiful again. So on our plan, we've done the beginning. Yesterday we did the middle, and we're having today we're looking at the end of our story, which is the last box, just one box today. So I'm just going to refresh what notes I made so I know what I can write about. So I say the giant changes, and I've said that he becomes kind. I've said children come back to play. I might say it's springtime again, the trees blossom, and that everyone is happy. Okay, now I'm going to think of some sentences in my head before I start to write them. So, like we did yesterday, think of the sentence in your head first, then count out loud and say the sentence and count on your fingers how many words there are. Then have a go at writing the words down one at a time. That way you won't forget what words you're writing. I've got an example here of what you might write for the ending of your story. Let's have a look. When the giant looked out of the frosty window, he couldn't believe his eyes. What an amazing sight it was. He could see a little bird singing sweetly, and all of a sudden the sun came out from behind the dark clouds. The selfish giant had not seen the sun for so long. He smiled happily and went down to the garden. More birds arrived, and he began to realize how unkind he had been. Why did he not want people to play in the garden? He knocked down the metal fence, and all of the children came into the lovely garden. There were delicate flowers everywhere, and the trees had started to blossom. The weather was beautiful, and the garden looked just like it had done before. The selfish giant promised that he would not be mean ever again. So I've just took the points from this last box and I've wrote it into sentences, and I've included extra details and description to make it more interesting. I've remembered to have my capital letters. I've got a few here that I'm highlighting now. And I've remembered my full stops at the end of my sentences too. Some of you might have noticed as well that I tried really hard in my writing today, and I'd use an exclamation sentence, again, using that word what. I said, what an amazing sight it was. So I'm exclaiming about how amazing it was. And I also used a question mark, here it is. Now we can't just put question marks at the end of any sentence. This usually we answer a question. This one is a rhetorical question, so we don't write the answer down. So I said, why did he not want people to play in the garden? So that's something the giant is thinking to himself in the story. Year 2, you can have a go at using an exclamation and a question mark in your sentence. Year 1, you might want to have a go at it too, but don't worry if you find that bit tricky, because we haven't done that yet in school. You can steal these if you want to have a go though. As well as all of this, I've got my describing words as well. The little bird singing. I've also got an adverb, singing sweetly, something year 2 you can have a go at using. Okay, we're still calling him selfish. We're describing the giant. Okay, the lovely garden. The weather was beautiful. So I'm not just writing boring sentences, I'm trying to make them as interesting as possible. We can always add some extra detail in our writing tomorrow when we come to edit it. But for now, use your plan, think of your sentences in your head before you write them, and have a really good go at writing the end of your story using all the points in your plan. I'm sure you're going to be brilliant.